If you've been feeling like the phrase false flag is popping up somewhere in the news almost weekly lately, you're not alone. That's because it has been. But it seems like the meaning of false flag is getting a bit twisted, because some people will often use the expression to help them make sense of difficult situations that challenge their worldview. So in this video, let's break down what a false flag operation actually is, where this phrase came from, and why it's gained so much traction in the media in recent years. You'll see some sources stating that false flag began in the 16th century because of pirate ships flying literal fake flags to be able to easily attack enemy ships. But this isn't quite right. The concept is true, but the nautical warfare aspect doesn't come into this story for another few hundred years, and we'll get to that a bit later. The first original meaning of false flag was a deliberate misrepresentation of motives or identity. This original meaning is entirely figurative, and you'll notice it has nothing to do with actual flags at all. False flags started in criticisms of religion. Specifically, the first documented use of false flag was in 1569, when a lawyer wrote this line in a book. Of this sort was Gardiner, that abused K. Henry with a false flag of religion when he made his book of True Obedience. Oxford's English Dictionary includes another example from a couple hundred years later, again figuratively criticizing Roman Catholicism, this time in a sermon. A religion that acts in disguise and masquerade, changes frequently its colors, and puts out a false flag to conceal the pirate. It wasn't until the 1800s that false flag actually started referring to deception at sea, which is the popular but not quite right explanation for how the term started. This type of false flag came from rules on the ocean. An approaching ship had to have a flag up that indicated their nationality or allegiance. But here's where the rules get kind of wild. According to a 1914 law journal, it was perfectly legal under maritime law for a ship to fly a false flag when approaching an enemy or trying to escape from a situation. However, if they were going to make an attack, they had to switch the flag to their real alliance just before the attack happened. Kind of crazy. So this use isn't just the figurative use we talked about before. It's a literal fake flag that's flown to misrepresent a ship. This is the noun phrase sense. And from here, the meaning has snowballed into other aspects of military and political situations. Throughout history, there are many examples of these types of false flags, such as when military task forces pretend to be from a different country in order to gain an advantage. Over time, false flag came to be used as an adjective, a way to describe a military exercise or plan. This is how false flag operation emerged, through a kind of combination of the first two senses of the meanings of the phrase. It's both a deliberate misrepresentation of something and, in some cases, a display of a literal false flag. Probably the most infamous example of a false flag operation is one that happened in 1939 because it was the kickoff to World War II, the Gleiwitz incident. In 1939, Hitler was trying to round up international support for Germany to invade Poland, but people weren't exactly getting on board. Reports started appearing in German newspapers claiming that awful things like torture were happening to German citizens who lived in Poland, but this wasn't enough to sway the people. Instead, a plan was devised. The Germans rolled 1,000 tanks to the border with Poland. After they were in place, in the evening of August 31st, 7 SS soldiers dressed in Polish uniforms stormed into a radio transmission station in the border town of Gleiwitz. They announced into the radio that the station had been taken over by the Polish. Bodies were even left at the scene to make the attack look real. The radio broadcast was picked up all around Germany, and the next day Hitler rolled his tanks into Poland. This is obviously a very extreme example, but it illustrates the very covert and sneaky nature of false flag operations. This leads us into our final but arguably most important point for this video: why false flag has been used with increasing frequency over the last couple decades. The concept of false flag operations became much more mainstream after the September 11th attacks in the US in 2001. It became a somewhat misguided way of trying to make sense of terrible tragedies, terrorist attacks, and shootings, which are often very difficult concepts to face. As the general public learned about false flag operations, more and more people began to theorize that certain awful things were not real, but rather were misrepresented or designed to look like something else, like a secret plan enacted by a government or a reclusive billionaire. This is how the phrase false flag has grown into a meaning adjacent to conspiracy theory. By immediately jumping to categorize something like an awful attack or act of war as a false flag, no space is left to consider that what happened might actually be real. Too often, especially on social media, discussions will dismiss genuine tragedies as false flags instead of taking a deeper look at the situation. To compound this, we also now have a world where real and fake information is available to us online 24/7, and there are absolutely bad actors in the media and the political world who gain advantages by spinning stories in certain ways or making up outright lies. Distrust in the media has been growing for decades, and this only adds fuel to the conspiracy theory leanings of false flag. Labeling a military or political situation that challenges one's worldview as a false flag is one way that people make sense of information that doesn't fit what they believe. While it's uncomfortable to be presented with information that doesn't match our values or what we think is true, it's important we look critically at the information we have. I think that's a more respectful approach to the victims of tragedies and those affected by difficult political and military contexts. False flag operations are real, but labeling everything as a false flag means the expression loses its meaning. While a healthy dose of skepticism and critical thinking is extremely important when reading the news, we should acknowledge that unfortunately, some of those not-so-happy stories we see are real. Because if we call every tragedy a false flag, how will we be able to recognize one that's genuine? Now at least you know the full story behind the phrase false flag, and you can keep it in mind next time you're scrolling the news. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, it really does help the channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.